Matthew, I have a question for you to kick things off today. How many RFPs do you feel like you have filled out over the course of your pre-sales career?
I think I have the same answer as every single SE on the planet, and that answer is too many.
Too many RFPs. And then follow up, how many times have you been told you need to fill out your Salesforce? Is that like a daily, weekly?
This is probably the thing that unites SEs and their AEs the most closely, because no one wants to update Salesforce.
I would agree. I think every meme about SE, AEs, bantering off of each other, we can all stand firmly with the no, I haven't updated my Salesforce and you can't make me do it.
We're all in that camp together.
That's actually going to be the topic of our podcast today. Hi, everyone. Jack Cochran, General Manager of the Presales Collective. Joining me, as always, is my fantastic co-host, Matthew James.
Hey, everyone. It's Matthew James right here in New York City.
And we just got done recording our episode with Manisha Raisinghani, who is the CEO and founder of SiftHub. We talk all about these topics, about AI, basically helping, I think is the best way to put it. All the different ways that AI can help, how you should be thinking about it, the ROI you get from that. We discussed a little bit as well about sort of that AE-SE ratio, why that's becoming more and more difficult to figure out. And I have more things I need to now explore on different AI tools coming out of the Q&A we had on the live show as well.
People on the live show were asking, how should I be using AI? And in today's conversation, we got some really practical tips.
Absolutely. And if you want to join the live show, we do that every other week on Tuesdays at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. GMT, unless that changed with daylight savings. I don't know. We'll have to check on that. Check your local LinkedIn for the actual event times that you can join the show in case you want to catch us live. Matthew, anything else you want to talk about before we hop into the episode?
Sounds like we should get right into this AI-rich conversation after the break.
Ever feel like you're spending too much time answering repetitive questions and solutioning? Pre-sales and solutions engineers are spread thin in most organizations, attending every sales call, fielding complex client inquiries, responding to asks from sales teams, drowning in a sea of RFPs and security questionnaires. Enter SiftHub, an AI sales engineer platform that empowers sales and pre-sales to improve win rates and close deals faster. The platform acts as a bridge between sellers and scattered company knowledge, a 24/7 AI teammate. SiftHub's AI platform instantly sifts through your company's knowledge, from Slack threads and Teams chats to your internal documentation, knowledge base, and CRM, to provide accurate, context-aware responses directly where your team works. It achieves all this with a secure platform that is greater than 99% accuracy. Trusted global companies like Superhuman, Observe Inc., Allegro, ActiveTrack, Archon, Netcore, Sirion, and more used SiftHub to boost sales team productivity by 80% and achieve 1.2x faster deal cycles. Want to see how it can transform your team's performance? Reach out to the team for a free trial and see the magic in action. Discover how SiftHub can help you close deals faster and more effectively. Manisha is the founder and CEO of SiftHub, and we're very excited to have you on the show today. Welcome, Manisha.
Thank you, Jack and Matt, for having me. I love this community, and I love speaking to pre-sales people and sales engineers. So super excited about the discussion today.
I think the best place to start is with your personal story. So would love to hear a little bit about what brought you to founding SiftHub. I got to hear a little bit about this at a dinner that we had. I think it was just last week or maybe the week before, but I'm excited to dig into the full story of really what brought you there and what got you to starting the company.
That was a good process, I would say. This is my second venture. When you start your first company, you kind of take the plunge blindly. You get an idea, you're like, hey, let me start building the product. The world needs it, and so on, right? This time it was a little different. So I ran Loginex. I started Loginex in 2014, and I ran the company for 8 years as CTO. And after that, while I was on break, advising a few companies on their enterprise GTM, because at Loginex, we were selling to enterprise customers. And a lot of companies were trying to go up market when I was advising them. And when I, started working with them, I was like, hey, how do I find all the deals which are going on? You have multiple CRMs. Where's this deck? Where's the customer conversation? Who's having the conversation with the customer again? What is the pain point of this customer? And I asked endless questions. And I asked a big question to myself. Why was I not facing this problem in my first venture? And I was like, I was the founder. And, like I literally knew from day zero what's happening in the company, what's kept where. We use so many tools, still you have very clear idea of the context. And I think along with access to knowledge, you automatically perform better and well if you have context about what you're doing. So 8 years of context was a lot. And I was like, so what used to happen earlier is when there was a big deal going on, all the A's and SEs used to, keep pinging my team because I was the CTO. Every enterprise sales needs a lot of technical help, right? I think winning or losing a deal really depends on how good the person is technically and is able to provide solutions, right? I mean, we are not here to sell features. It's about how you're solving customers' pain point. Everyone used to keep pinging me, like multiple Slack channels around, hey, what is the data security policy? Hey, when is the ISO certification expiring? Hey, we have this route optimization algorithm, how to set up the constraints and so on. And the teams get bogged down, the other teams, especially SMEs, SEs, they get bogged down with a lot of questions from sellers. So I did a lot of interviews, actually. I spoke to 200 people around this problem statement before starting SiftHub. And it was an eye-opener how many CROs, how many sales leaders, SE leaders, and growth stage founders saw this as an instant, like solution to their problem. So that was the story behind SiftHub being born.
I can personally attest to the fact that I have been in that very same boat of feeling like every deal, not only is it do we need the technical team's help, we need the questions answered, but I felt like I was asking the same question over and over again because I didn't know if it had changed. I'm like, I know I asked this 2 months ago, but is the situation different? And you have to hit those answers over and over again, even if it's been the same for a year. You want to be absolutely positive, especially on the really large enterprise deals. I've acutely seen that for sure.
And with the agile methodology these days, features are being built faster than ever, right? Like, how do you expect anyone, any seller or even SE, to literally know everything all the time and have that knowledge on their fingertips? It's just, humanly not possible to do it in real time. So, I mean, there are a lot of factors which have changed. The buyer's journey has changed. So, all these conditions put together was a very compelling reason for me to solve this problem. And I've seen it firsthand. I've lived through that problem. So it excites me every single day.
Speaking of things that have changed over the last couple of years of enterprise selling, we all know technology has changed a lot. But something that I have noticed amongst different solutions organizations is how our SEs are distributed across AEs. So I've heard people who are doing one SE to one AE, and I've heard people doing one SE to 20 AEs. And I think that the normal number is probably somewhere in the middle. 10 is probably around average of what I've been hearing. But how have you been seeing that, Manisha? And that must play as well into solving these kinds of problems, because when you're trying to track deals across 10 or 5 AEs, that's where it becomes a scalable issue.
I'm sorry, but I'll have to give you a consulting answer here. It depends. Right?
The solutions engineer's answer.
Yeah. Because there are a lot of nuances when it comes to this ratio. It depends on multiple factors, right? How complex or technical your product is. That's the beginning point. Is it a platform? Is it a product? Do you have different SEs for different modules or different products? Do you have SEs spread across the entire platform? And then also, what are your ACVs? Are you selling to SMBs? Are you selling to mid-market? Or are you selling to enterprises? Now, even when you're selling to enterprises, are you selling to, let's say, a salesperson or a CRO? Are you selling to a team or you're selling to an org? So there are a lot of factors which go behind this. For example, a company with a 1-month sales cycle might be okay with having this ratio of 1:10 or 1:15. In terms of, one sales engineer helping 15 E's, which is still a lot, honestly. But when it comes to very, very large enterprises, if you have multi-million-dollar deals, then you will see the ratio to be, 1:2 kind of a ratio. But for a typical, I would say, mid-market kind of a deal, if the ACVs are, let's say, around 100K, 200K, what I have seen a good ratio is usually 1:4 or 1:5. Basically, there are 4 sellers and 1 sales engineer is helping them. Then another big factor in this is how good your sales team is at solutioning. I mean, there are 2 aspects of sales job, right? One is solutioning and second is building relationships amongst all the other 70% of the time which they waste on everything admin, which is updating Salesforce, recording meeting notes and so on, trying to find pain points. So if the sales DNA is very strong when it comes to technical solutioning, then the ratio is more towards, lower side. So it depends from company to company. A lot of dev tools, a lot of technical products, they have like pretty intense ratio in terms of, they would have like, let's say one SE to 2-3 sellers because they're talking to developers, right? They're talking to CTOs. Now, when you're talking to a CTO, you really need to know everything about the product. I mean, you will be getting tough questions because I think the most difficult thing, I was just talking to Lacey as well, a couple of weeks back. She's the VP of sales at Docker. I think the most difficult thing selling to CTOs is they think they can build everything in-house.
And they probably can. But the question is, should they?
Should they spend their expensive engineering bandwidth in building something which is revenue generating? Or should they build something which can help their ops? So, yeah, I mean, there are a lot of factors in this.
I wrote down here when you were talking about solutioning and building relationships being kind of a part of that equation as well. I think that's also a very true factor that has become more important over the past, I'd say 5, 6, 7 years, where we're seeing more of what's required from SEs during the call being the relationship building. I remember when I was first getting started as an SE, it was very much the AE owns the relationships. They own all of those conversations. They own kind of setting the stage for what we're going to be talking about. And the SE was being parachuted in to fill the gaps technically. But I'm not seeing that as much to truth anymore. In fact, I'm seeing a lot of the relationships needing to have the technical person doing it. And it was getting asked a lot more to be the one owning a lot of those, including champion building as well, which is something that was completely on the account executive side when I was getting started. So I'm seeing a lot of that skew happening, which in one way is good if your company is willing to give you a better AE-SE ratio. But when they're not, I mean, that's where you're dealing with sort of the heavy workloads. And I think one thing that I know a lot of people are here to listen to is when we're in those types of deals, what are the things from an AI perspective should we be looking at so that we can do those roles effectively? I think everyone here enjoys the fact that that's the way things have gone. But if you're still required to do the same level, you still have the same number of deals, the same amount of influence you had before, but now you have to do it. Where can we expect AI to step in? What's a great place for that?
SEs are now responsible for relationship building, has a very strong reasoning behind it. So the buyer journey has changed, right? Earlier, when buyer used to talk to a seller, they were not really aware of what's there in the product, what pain points can the product solve, and so on. But over the years, marketing is bombarding the buyer with so much content, so much material. There's G2, there's Capterra. People can go and compare what tools are good in what. And now when the buyers are coming on the call, they don't expect, a fancy presentation, a deck from an AE. On the first call itself, they ask level 2 questions. They don't want you to talk about your features. They want you to talk about how are you going to solve the problem which I have. And that's where solutioning team is getting involved. Buyers today, they like talking to people who give them the solutions and not to people who are just there to build relationships, negotiate, and talk to them only during renewals. They want to talk to real people who are actually giving them solutions. So I think that is the mindset shift which has happened because of a lot of information which basically, we have created this problem for ourselves, honestly, by sending those 1,000 emails a day to multiple companies. Now, coming to AI. So, as Matt was saying, when we talk about these questions, so there are multiple things that solutions engineers do. Amongst that, I would like to bucket it into, three things. So the first bucket is basically solution, which is, their core job. Like, hey, this is a customer problem. This is the platform. Now, how do we find a solution to this? And what can our platform do today? What do we need to do to customize? How do we bring in an implementation partner to do so and so? What is the architecture of the system? And, everything which is basically related to solutioning. The second bucket is keeping on answering questions from multiple people in the company. Sellers keep pinging them about the deals they are working on. Product managers keep pinging them for customer insights, right? A lot of times we miss on this fact that PMs are actually depending a lot on SEs to get those customer insights. And the third bucket, which is demoing and helping, with POCs and stuff. So these are the three main buckets outside relationship building and all of the work they are doing. Now, AI can actually help them literally everywhere. So as Matt said, that those repetitive questions, right? I mean, that's a very low-hanging fruit. You will always find answers to these repetitive questions in one place or the other. So some of this knowledge is tribal or undocumented, I would say. But even that tribal knowledge would be in some Slack thread. The definition of tribal knowledge 2 years back and today has completely changed. Earlier, if the knowledge was not documented, let's say on your SharePoint or your Drive, your Zendesk support articles, it was called as tribal knowledge. But today, that knowledge always existed in your Slack threads. That knowledge always existed in your team channels. Today, you can read that knowledge. Today, you can, use that knowledge to actually help SEs, answer repetitive questions. I mean, why should people even ask SEs? People should first ask AI. Stop bugging SEs. Stop bombarding them with 1,000 questions. They are part of, 100 channels on Slack and people keep bombarding them. So ask AI first. And also AI works 24/7, right? I mean, there are so many companies, especially after COVID, the teams are present globally. Right? A lot of people are still working remote. And generally also for companies who are selling globally, they would be having teams in London, New York, SF, India. And let's say if a SE is sitting in London and the deal is happening in SF, and then there is a solution leader which is sitting in Australia, it becomes almost impossible to, have 12 to 24 hours turnaround to answer a basic question and come to a consent that, okay, this is the right answer. So basically having a 24/7 sidekick always helps.
I love your definition of tribal knowledge changing. It's absolutely right. I think we all notice it when like someone is going to be leaving, right? Like a really key important person. Oh, they're leaving. And there's that mad scramble to have them spend the entire time after they put in their notice to just document everything. Things that you're right, they've likely put into Slack already. They probably answered somewhere in some other document that they pulled together. I think that's a great application, a great way to think about it. The tribal knowledge already exists documented. You don't have to worry about it as much anymore. I love that thought.
It's the kind of thing that we would expect computers to be able to do by now. I have spent hours searching for little bits of how the edge cases work on certain ones of our integrations. And usually I do find it after going to 5 different client Slack channels and then looking through, maybe it's in the product Slack channel, maybe it's actually just in a DM somewhere. And you can usually find it. But the idea that you could just throw that over to an AI and find it quickly, that's the kind of technology that I expect when we also have other technologies that are marketing the exact right product to me at the exact right time. If I'm treating that way as a consumer, I wish I could benefit from some of that in my work life too. And it sounds like we're getting there.
And not just Slack chat thread, right? What you were saying is, let's say the deal is going on for quite some time. Let's say if it's taking 6 months to close a deal, right? If it's let's $500,000 deal, it's not going to get closed in a month unless you have a relationship with the prospect from already 1 year. So a lot of this, what we used to call tribal knowledge, is actually in Salesforce, would actually be in some decks in HighSpot or in Seismic, because you're always creating these customer specific decks and you're putting the solutions there. But the place where we go and check for these solutions or edge cases is always either support articles and like Zendesk kind of support articles, or our SharePoints or our Google Drives. But now if you can, get these answers and get these solutions from Salesforce, from your sales enablement tools, it is not tribal anymore.
I think that's absolutely right. I mean, people need to be thinking about all the different places. I guess that brings up a little bit of a question of, it feels like we're getting back to the problem that we used to have, that the reason why our CRO decided eventually to buy and enforce everyone to get everything into Salesforce, because all the information exists everywhere. So doesn't that mean we're creating more sources of truth? And now we're into this problem where what data can you trust? Is that something we don't need to worry about anymore? If we're thinking about the data can be anywhere, it could be in Salesforce, but it could also be in this other place we've captured it. Do we still need to focus on making records of truth as much as we can? Where do we sit with that, with AI being in the middle now?
That's a very interesting question. And I keep thinking about this a lot as a SaaS founder. I think a lot of these problems are created by SaaS founders by having so many, different applications for solving every problem. 2021 was crazy, all of us know, right? I mean, there were just so many SaaS companies getting funded and companies buying SaaS applications.
There's a SaaS for everything. And then you're right, money was flowing around. So all the SaaSes for everything were getting bought. SaaS for your elevator, SaaS for the right music to listen to while you're working.
Exactly. And in 22, things got bad, right? I mean, we saw that we were like, all of a sudden, money was not there. Buyers didn't have money to purchase softwares. Investors didn't have money they had money, but they didn't want to keep funding the companies. So there was a time, I think, from June to November in 2022, when there was a lot of conversation around consolidation of softwares, right? Consolidation of SaaS softwares, because there were too many softwares, knowledge is spread across multiple tools. You have to keep pushing your sellers and SEs to actually update Salesforce. And all this changed in November 22 when ChatGPT was launched. All the attention went to ChatGPT. And the problem got worse, honestly. Now, instead of bundling of these SaaS platforms, we are seeing even more unbundling. And the reason for that is AI is most effective when you're actually integrated deep into users' workflows. If you're not deeply integrated in users' workflows, then basically you'll have to make them go to AI and use AI. If you're integrated in their daily workflows, all the daily tasks that they are doing, you don't have to make them adopt the product. You're just doing it for them, right? You're just helping them with every step, every task that they are doing. So I think, because of, unbundling, now the knowledge is spread across more tools and there's more push to update the Salesforce. Well, this is something I think it's a little bit controversial. A lot of people might not like this comment, but so there is this entire segment of companies who are trying to build platforms to update Salesforce. Listening to your conversations, updating Salesforce, putting your, gong recordings in Salesforce and so on. I was like, why do you need those tools? You can depend on all these different platforms for knowledge sources if you have a layer sitting on top of that. So if you see, that's the problem SiftHub is solving as well. So we are a layer sitting on top of all these platforms. So instead of salespeople or SEs wasting time in updating Salesforce, even if they have, all the knowledge, all the fields pulled from different conversations and so on, why do even review that knowledge? Just consolidate the knowledge, consolidate the user experience, and stop updating Salesforce. Salesforce, it will always exist. For system of records, there will always be some things which will exist in Salesforce, but not everything.
It's like that Salesforce shouldn't be the end all be all. And I think that's not what we want, right? We want Salesforce to exist as a great system of record. But ideally, We use what's in Salesforce to get somewhere. And so I think what you're saying is stop thinking about just Salesforce as the end goal. Think about getting that thing you want to go, getting the answers, getting what you need on a specific deal. You can just skip that bundling layer and just go right to the answers.
Exactly. Totally. I mean, focus on closing the deals and not updating Salesforce.
You're speaking my language.
We're not here to update Salesforce. We're here to close deals. We're here to help people to actually buy what we're selling. And if I can do that by getting my answers more quickly without having to figure out how to run the report I need in Salesforce or find the right opportunity record or research if the account might be tied to another parent account, let's get out of trying to do the Salesforce understanding and dissection half the time. And instead, I mean, this is both from an input and an output perspective, just don't touch it if you don't have to. Let someone else or something else, let AI touch it.
Totally. Yeah, instead of, there's this entire industry segmentation which every company does. I mean, if you're selling a horizontal platform to multiple industries like healthcare, pharma, retail, banking, there's this activity almost every company does to try to understand where's the fitment of the platform in each industry. And for that, you need to have all the right nodes in Salesforce, all the right numbers in Salesforce. Now, it is a very tedious activity. How do you get the sentiments of the customers put in Salesforce? So instead, if you just get a platform where you can ask, where is the fitment of my product in so-and-so industry? I mean, you want that answer, like you want a table, a ready-made table with all the industries and talking about the fitment or the confidence in different industries instead of going through all the conversations and Salesforce notes and trying to, figure it out in a cube, in a quarterly meeting or an annual planning.
So for our listeners, how do SEs be the bearer of this insight and the right things to do from an AI tool? How do we empower our SEs and what should they do? What should they be thinking about when they're going to leverage this and have an impact on their deals?
So for SEs, see, the biggest advantage they have is they are sitting at the intersection of engineering and sales. I mean, that it's called sales engineers, right? Solutions engineers, sales engineers, pre-sales. There are just so many terminologies for SEs. So that's the biggest advantage they have. They are sitting at the intersection of sales and engineering. And if they can automate all their repetitive tasks by using AI, and there are different stages at which they can use AI, Let's talk about a couple of stages where AI is like very, very powerful. So starting with prospecting is usually SEs are not involved in prospecting. It is done by SDRs and BDRs, and we have a lot of AI SDR tools.
I was just wondering about that. Yeah, there are a ton of AIs over there too. Write this message specific for this person.
Yeah. So SEs, embrace yourself. Those AI SDRs are going to create a lot of pipeline for you. And I don't know how many of these deals are going to be really valid ones. So there's more work coming for SEs, right? So let's say once you get a meeting, there's a discovery call. Now, again, it depends on org structure. If they involve SEs in the discovery call, and sometimes they don't involve, right? Sometimes SEs come very late in the deal life cycle. And when they join, they're like, oh my God, what's happening in the deal? There's so much context already there in the deal. Then they would go and listen to these conversations and read the notes on Salesforce and so on. So right from the discovery call, let's say if you are having multiple discovery and deep dive calls with the customers, you have to manually find these pain points. Now, yeah, you can upload these transcripts on ChatGPT or, your call recording tools can give you action items and what was the pain points identified. But how about combining your own knowledge, your own notes, your call recordings like, Gong or Zoom call recordings, your Salesforce notes, combining all this to actually find the real pain points. Your product is solving 100 pain points, but what are the 5 pain points this customer has? And just don't stop to that. What are the solutions which are available to this pain point? Now, that solution might vary depending on what industry the customer belongs to, what region the customer belongs to. Let's say if I'm selling something to Adidas, Adidas is the prospect, and we have already sold to Nike. There is so much you can learn from how solutioning was done in Nike. And you might not be the person who was involved in the Nike deal, right? Your colleague might be involved, and maybe that person already left the company. You can use AI to actually combine this knowledge and help you with solutioning at every step, till you close the deal.
That point there on the double deals thing, I think hits pretty hard for a lot of companies if you really think about it, because I'm thinking about when we would have deals that would be like, okay, we have a new airline customer. Who sold the other airline? And if we can't assign them as primary, we have to have them writing shotgun to advise on all the different things. And it's all of a sudden you have 2, sometimes 3 additional SCs writing shotgun on this big deal because they have the knowledge. It's so much overhead. And I love the idea of not being able to do that. Would have been so much time saved, I think, on everyone's plate.
These might seem like edge cases, but these are so crucial in closing the deal. And it is so time intensive to do this manually. No one was ever thinking to do it before. And now, because of AI, you can actually use these insights to close deals faster and win more deals. So that is one area. The second one is POCs. Now, when a buyer is buying a product, they are not just talking to you, they are talking to your competition as well, right? They are talking to at least 3 to 4 vendors to start with, and then maybe they'll do a POC with 2 to 3 vendors. There is so much competitive intel in those POCs. There is so much of product roadmap in those POCs. And all of this doesn't get documented. All of this goes into battle cards, which is created by sales enablement team after a quarter. And by that time, the data is already outdated. Your competition has something else, right? The way you're building features is very different. So there is so much competitive intel and client intel in all these conversations, especially POCs, which is not getting utilized by the rest of the company. So your best SE knows a lot. They are more curious. They are trying to learn from other SEs. But how about the rest of the SEs? Where are they learning from? So they need to have access to these real-time insights so that they can also, help their customers better.
Yeah, I think POCs represent a really unique slice of insight that a lot of companies don't take advantage of. One example that I heard, which I thought was a really great idea, which is, when you get that questionnaire in an RFP and you're like, man, this looks really familiar. I know I've seen these questions before. Where have I seen these questions before? And that normally can start a madhouse search of, was this created by our competitor? How would we know? Is a great use case for AI to be able to say, where have I seen this before? What deal was it on? Or what deals were they on? To get an idea of, oh, that's right. That was one from 2 years ago that we lost to our competitor. And we found out after the fact they actually had written it. So we're looking at our competitor's RFP. That's just a small piece that can save a lot of time and give you a good direction. So one, if you should even participate and waste your time doing it. Or 2, now we know what we're up against. Now we know how to position our questions because we know who the competitive landscape is in our RFPs.
Right. No, totally. I'm glad you brought this up. So one of the things where SEs can use AI is filling these questionnaires and RFPs, right? It's a dreading job. Find me one person who loves filling these questionnaires or these RFPs.
I love filling it out when AI can do it for me.
Exactly. Right? It's a dreading job. Like you have these 1,000 questions. You have to find answer to every question. You have to make sure you have the updated answer. You have to make sure you're customizing the answer for that industry. You have to ensure that the language which the customer is using, let's say if I'm asking, describe your information security policy versus do you have an information security policy, the answer is going to be worded differently. And on top of that, if you are selling in Europe, then again, there's language issue, right? So do you hire one person, one SE in Germany, one person in France, one person in some other country to actually fill all these questionnaires? So that's one place where we have seen SEs are saving a lot of time from filling the RFPs, like taking, let's say, 32 to 48 hours to filling 500 to 1,000 questions RFPs to literally getting the first draft in 1 hour. And now, what do you do with this extra time? Be creative. make it a winning RFP, right? Make it a winning questionnaire and hyper personalize. AI can give you some level of personalization, hyper personalize with what you know about your product, what you know about this customer. Since you mentioned, Jack, you know which vendor has helped the buyer create the RFP. So we have one interesting feature where you can upload the RFP and you can actually ask these questions. You can ask, which of our competition would have helped the customers, would have helped the prospect build this RFP? Which other RFPs we have in the system who look close to, this current RFP I'm working on?
Yeah, I think it's so critical, and it's great to hear that you have that. This has been a fantastic conversation. One final question to Manisha. One, if someone wants to find you, where can they find you? And anything interesting you want to highlight that's being worked on right now, either that you're working on personally or that's being worked on at SiftHub?
So you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm very active. I speak to a lot of SEs. I learn a lot from them, honestly. I'm always very, very curious. What all problems can we solve for SEs? AI Teammate is the big thing that we are working on. We already have an amazing version of it, and we are keeping on improving it to take away more and more repetitive tasks from AEs and SEs. One advice I would give everyone is embrace AI. AI solutions engineer or AI sales engineer is your sidekick, is your teammate. SEs are not going to go anywhere. AI is not going to replace them. So embrace AI and be a powerhouse in just increasing your productivity by, maybe 10x.
I love to increasing your productivity 10x would be, I could do 10 times more. I think that's how that goes. I want to thank you so much for joining us and had a blast with the conversation today.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Manisha.
Thank you for listening to the Presales Podcast. These shows are recorded live during our bi-weekly LinkedIn show called Presales Live and include a listener Q&A after each recording. To find information on the live show, head to presalescollective.com/podcast, follow the Presales Collective page on LinkedIn, or join the Presales Collective Slack. We have a dedicated channel for the Presales Podcast where you can find more information and join in the conversation after the show. We'll see you next time.